Matt Hart.
This is Dale Jackson. Hello.
Hey, Dale. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm returning your phone call.
Well, I wanted to talk to you. I know it's Sunday. I hate to bother people on Sunday, but it must not have been too big a bother since you returned my call.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem.
Let me grab my little note I was looking at.
Okay.
And it was something off your radio show. Now, before we talk, I want to understand our ground rules, if you will, and because I've got certain limitations on what I can say to journalists or commentators or whatever somebody is, and some of them, might not want to accept that, and that's fair enough. I understand that, but can we speak off the record, not for attribution, etc.? Can
Sure.
we do that?
Sure.
Okay. And I really don't know. I would never deny anything I said to you, in front of like a court or something like that. And I'm not going to break a rule with you, disclose something I shouldn't disclose, even if you were willing to listen to me do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not wise. I have a certain job, so I can get burned on that kind of thing by a journalist, but only once.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, here's my concern. I don't think we've met before, have we?
I don't think so.
Yeah, but I'm the prosecutor. I assume I'm the prosecutor on this Hubbard deal.
Correct.
Or I'm one of the prosecutors. I'm the senior, full-time guy. Van Davis is the acting attorney general on the case. Now, I'm looking at, amongst many other things I've looked at, I have been disturbed by something, generally speaking. And what I'm disturbed by is various public officials and commentators such as yourself and others, most of whom are, Republicans or conservatives. Mr. Hubbard is a Republican and he says he's a conservative, coming out and just stating flatly that either one, the prosecutor's integrity ought to be questioned, mine or anybody else on the team, and that two, that this prosecution is facially political. Now I'm going to read you your particular little thing. It's you posted it on October 21st, and it says, underlined in blue, it's got a little link to it. Of course, the indictment of Speaker Hubbard is political, ellipse. And you say, keep in mind, it doesn't mean that it's not legit, which is a caveat you put up there. So here's why. One, it's 2 weeks before election. Two, not all politics are D versus R, see Clinton, Obama. Three, look at all leaks from this grand jury. What purpose did they serve if not to damage Hubbard politically? Four, we already have an individual challenging Hubbard for Speaker of the House. We're talking about Mr. Carnes. Five, rumors of Luther Strange targeting Hubbard in order to damage him for a potential governor's race in 2018 are rampant. I think isn't that 2016?
No, it'd be 2018.
Oh, you're right. That's right. No, you're right. It is 2018. That's right. And six, this nonsense from the AG's office. There's a link there. I hadn't punched that link. It's probably Sonny Reagan link, I assume. And so you say below that, so let's stop this garbage, ellipse. And I'm really not sure what that means, number one. What can you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, it just means let's stop saying it's not political. There's obviously politics all over this thing.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what you base that on, other than the fact, and I knew when when an indictment goes out, now here's one thing that is objective and true. The indictment came out 2 weeks before an election. That is true and objective, and it is going to generate, we haven't been living in a cave for the last couple of decades.
Right.
It's going to generate accusations and worse. Accusations are one thing, but I'll tell you what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about the evidence or the case, but I am worried about a Lee County jury pool, which is still fairly small. Auburn's booming and everything, but Lee County is a fairly small little place. And Mr. Hubbard has been out there. He had a giant press conference with an entourage of public officials standing next to the indicted individual. And then he did a full one-page ad in the Auburn Opelika News, which is the dominant newspaper down there. Mm-hmm. And he's made numbers of statements saying that we're cheaters, me specifically, but also, this Luther thing about wanting to be governor and so forth. Now, one thing that I thought journalists would do is just challenge him on facial inconsistency.
Well, I'm not a journalist, first off.
I know you're not. You're a commentator. That's what I would use. How do you describe yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. Is a commentator what you refer to yourself as?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is different. I know that's different, and I've been listening to commentators all my life. But even commentators, people listen to them because they find them interesting. They care what they have to say. If people didn't care what you had to say, you wouldn't be in business right now. So I still am concerned, even with commentators who say things, and I don't have an objection to it. I'm all for free speech. I don't ever want to seal anything. I'm against sealing anything. I'm the world's leading proponent of sunshine laws, and have been for years. I also do believe that the press has a super important role, or has had historically a super important role in our particular American society, that's important, beyond just, being interesting to read and everything. And that's why, I think that's why our First Amendment is unique, to my knowledge, unique in the world. And I've been a lot of other places in the world, Honduras, et cetera. So I appreciate what we've got. Now, having said that, there are a lot of things that could drive an indictment coming out 2 weeks before an election. All of them unfortunate in my view. But we don't get to pick everything. I know you've heard the issue about the statute of limitations. Yeah. People are bouncing that around. Mm-hmm. Now I'll just tell you, I probably can't talk about evidence, although the rules allow us to respond in kind. And at some point, if we keep this up, we are. I don't want the citizenry to be misled in a way that thwarts just justice. And I don't know anything about Mr. Hubbard. I never met him before this. All these things about the Riley machine that Mr. Reagan's talking about, that I, allegedly said I was going to go after the Riley machine or Riley people. I don't even know anything about the Riley machine. I don't refer to them that way. I voted for Bob Riley twice. Not that I share that with the world. I don't share my own political views. I'm absolutely entitled to them, just like any other citizen is. I'm entitled to political views. But because of my job, I think it's wise not to engage in the day-to-day politics. I don't give politicians money. The last time I did that, for one thing, I don't have any money as a public employee of any significance, but I also just don't think it's smart. The last time I did that was probably 15, 20 years ago. A friend of mine ran for a judgeship. I thought he was a good guy, and I gave him, I don't know, a couple $100 or whatever it was. But I don't even do that now, and I don't put signs in my yard, but I am a lifelong conservative. Now, people who've been on my team, first guy I ever voted for when I went in the Army was Ronald Reagan, when he ran against Jimmy Carter. And, those are, and I don't know if I fit a perfect mold of the conservative or not. I probably don't. Like some areas like the environment and a couple others, I probably wouldn't be a perfect conservative. But, generally I hold those views, and I have for years. It has nothing to do with my work and the teams that I've put together. I've had prosecutors that work for me and that I've worked with, and investigators. They're all over the board. Democrats, Tamara Johnson. I don't know if you know her. Do you know Tamara in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Birmingham?
I've heard of her.
I picked Tamara to work on that unit up there. She and I are about as different as you could possibly be in this world. She wants to pay more taxes, for instance. I don't particularly want to pay more taxes. I'd rather not. And I'd rather not take somebody else's money. I'd rather them make their own and me make my own. But so she and I are different in that way, and many others. She grew up a black female, and I grew up a white male. Those things make us different. She's a lot smarter than I am. She's a Supreme Court clerk and a Bristow fellow and all that, but she was a great prosecutor for me. We agreed on the fundamental of enforcing the law, which was, in this country, it's the same for everybody. It's just the same for everybody. And when I was doing Sue Schmitz, do you remember her?
Mm-hmm.
Or E.B. McClain? Or Bryant Melton, those three Democratic legislators who were taken out in the post-secondary case.
Yeah, the 2-year college scandal.
Yes, the 2-year college case that I did. Now, I got OPR complaints out of that from some of the same people who are now affiliated with Mr. Hubbard. And I got accusations of grand jury abuse and all other kinds of things. DOJ assigned me somebody to defend me, and I did it. I got a bar complaint or complaints, those kinds of things. And I was never found to have engaged in any misconduct because I didn't. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you something, and it's a little disheartening for me. And actually, your link on this thing was sent to me by one of my subordinates, a young guy who's a prosecutor who works for the AG's office. And, not to sound like sniveling babies. If I was a sniveling baby, I'd find me another job, believe me. Because Republicans were loving it a few years ago when we were knocking out crooked legislators for the first time in maybe 3 decades. And it needed to be done because they were violating the law. I'm not saying Mr. Hubbard's violated the law yet. A trial should determine that, a fair trial. But there is no evidence out there really that justifies questioning the integrity of the prosecution. The only thing that does that comes from the defendant. Now, it was 2 weeks before, and this grand jury this is a matter of public record, this grand jury has been taking evidence since September, is impaneled in August, taking evidence since September of last year. So it's about a calendar year. And I hear the media just repeating the talking points. And I'll tell you, I know as a matter of fact, and I'm sure you know a lot more about media stuff than I do, the defense, they have a media plan.
Of course.
They had a plan months ago. You're in their plan. You and your friends in the commentating business are in their plan. They want to send their associates to you. And
well, think about this for a second. Think about this. And I understand where you're going with this, but let me just say this. Have we not heard for months everything that possibly was going on in that grand jury leaked to guys like Bill Britt? Who's doing that?
No. The answer to your question is no. And guess where all of those accusations are coming from? I'm glad you asked that, because they've been very successful, distressingly successful, in making everybody in the world think there are leaks coming from the grand jury.
So Bill Britt's Bill Britt and Archibald and all these guys, they're just guessing.
Are you assuming that everything Bill Britt has written in his articles is accurate?
No. I'm not saying that, but he's not just. I assume he's not just.
They're not. I looked at them, and I know whether they are or not. I don't have to guess.
I'm not assuming that they're 100% accurate, but I'm also not assuming that he's just making them up out of whole cloth.
He's not. But here's how that works, and I'm sure you know this, and I would think you know it better than I do, but maybe not. I don't know exactly what your background is as far as this kind of thing, but here's how that works. All of Mr. Hubbard, there's no question in my mind that Mr. Hubbard has political enemies across the spectrum. The AEA does, in fact, I believe. I mean, they don't call me and consult with me. I think they hated him. I think the AEA hated him and had a big fight, just like the trial lawyers and the business council did a decade ago. They hated each other, trying to ruin each other, and calling each other criminals and taking advantage of everything fair and unfair that they could. No question in my mind that they've been helping Mr. Britt and telling him things. Now, people need to understand what the grand jury secrecy law covers and what it does not.
It covers the people who are on the grand jury and the people who are the prosecutors in the case. It does not cover the subjects.
No, that's not quite accurate in the state of Alabama. And it's different than the federal system. First of all, it does not cover the prosecutors. I can talk to somebody because it's necessary. Let's say I've got to go, I get some evidence in a grand jury, and I need to go ask somebody about it. Every time you do an interview, you have to make a decision. Well, do I ask them about it, or do I call them the grand jury so they have the secrecy or not? The prosecutors can disclose those things in the course of their law enforcement business. That's what the law is. Now, I can't just go share it at a party, for a non-law enforcement purpose. But who's covered are the grand jurors, the court reporter, and the witnesses. But here's how they're covered. Especially the witnesses. Witnesses in the federal system aren't covered at all. They can leave and say whatever they want to. In the state system, they've got to keep those things secret, everything that occurs in the room. Now, what they can do and what they have done, they go to, I don't know about Mr. Britt specifically, but let's say Britt or any other person they want to go to. And they say, hey, look, I got this subpoena. They're subpoenaing me for next Wednesday. And they did this. I know people did things like this. They were all talking, or not all of them, but lots of them. I've got a subpoena. Well, what could they be asking me about? Well, I know this. I did this, or I did that, or I was at this meeting. And they can talk about those things. They already know them. They're free Americans. They can They can talk about those things. And now once I ask them about it in grand jury, if I do, and then they leave, they can still go tell people, well, I was involved in this, that, and the other, if it's something that, they did. What they can't share, and the only thing they can't share, is what is discussed in the confines of the grand jury room. Here's the warning. Mr. Witness, neither you nor the court reporters nor the grand jurors can leave the confines of the grand jury room and go out anywhere else and disclose directly or indirectly what occurred in the confines of the grand jury room. Questions asked, answers given, impressions formed, evidence reviewed. Anything else is secret. You got to keep it secret if you don't, it's a felony, blah, blah. But they can still talk to people about what they already knew before they came in there. It doesn't take much to put a lot of that together. And they can certainly tell people, I'm subpoenaed to the grand jury. And other people who were in meetings with them can say, they're going to ask him about that. It's not that hard to do. Now, here's the alternative. And the other talking point is this. It's been taking so long. This is so long, and these leaks are intentional and all this kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what we've done. I've been walking in a snake pit for a long time, and I try to watch where I put my feet. The defense has communicated with us on occasion over the last month saying, these leaks are in the grand jury. It's thematic. There's no question. I knew this was coming. So we said, if you know of a leak in the grand jury or anything that indicates a leak, you need to report it to law enforcement because that's a violation of the law. It's a felony. And we'll track it down. And they did report it a couple of times. And let me tell you what we did, just to be careful. We halted operations and tracked that down. We even called in some people and said, now, look, it's been alleged that you've said A, B, or C, or that you have some source in the grand jury. And first of all, I really want to know if that was true, because it would be an issue for lots of reasons. And they just weren't accurate. It just was not so.
So you called Bill Britt in and his people and talked to them about this?
No, I didn't say I called Bill Britt in. And calling a journalist or calling a commentator, either one, is a whole different ball of wax, and it gets into free speech issues. Mm-hmm. That courts review as they should, with a real, close thing. But all the witnesses, these people, I called in who people affiliated with defense said spoke like they had a leak in the grand jury, including some public officials and lobbyist types and people like that. We said, this is happening in grand jury, and there's no debate about whether they sent us a letter, and they said, so-and-so said he's got grand jury access, and he told this person that, and it was secondhand from them. But we did, we went and made it firsthand, and just tracked it right down, and then called them and said, well, it just wasn't true, several things like that. So all I can do is say this to you, and you don't know me, so feel free to reject. I'm sure you do. There's no evidence of any leak. What there is evidence of is consistent reporting, some of it accurate and some of it not, I'll tell you. Various blogs, some of whom hate the defendant. They are out there in the parking lot taking photos and seeing who's coming in there. I've been sneaking people out of grand jury just to try to keep the hubbub down. But I'm just telling you right now, there's no evidence of a leak in the grand jury. And people are drawing conclusions just by reading Mr. Britt's column or reading John Archibald and assuming it's true. And it's just not. It's just not. I'm really... and really nobody's been challenging the defense on it. What's Mr. Hubbard been saying for a year? He's got bunches of printed stuff out there that says, I don't know why anybody didn't question him about his change in his assertions. He's got printed things in his campaigns and speeches he's made. The liberal special interests are after me. I've changed things. So the liberal special interests hate it. And they're generating all this, and they're coming after me no matter what, because, I'm different than them, and I've changed the way business is being done. All of a sudden, that's just faded away. You don't hear that. You hear that Luther wants to be governor now.
I've been hearing that. I've been hearing that for months. That's from the beginning.
Me too. No, I'm talking about what the public hears. He's been publicly making statements and running ads. I call that a public statement.
Okay.
Saying liberal special interests are after me. Well, are they, or is it Luther Strange, or do you consider him a liberal special interest? And Luther's out. All he's been done is hammered by this thing. That's all that I'm aware of.
Well, right, but here's the deal, though. That also, the liberal special interest stuff was also the Alabama Foundation for Limited Government, funded by the AEA, and those guys who were supporting guys who were supporting him, like Sandy Toomer and Josh Pipkin and all those other guys who were running under the John Rice banner, where the money obviously came from the AEA, but because of how that's the liberal special interest I think you'd be talking about.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
This part,
AEA money, I wouldn't say that's not, in my world, I mean, we all assign common meaning to terms. AEA money is liberal special interest money. I agree with that.
Yeah, so now I think we're past that point because I don't think he's really all that worried about that election. I think he is worried, however, about this, and clearly you are too, because we're talking about a grand jury pool being tainted down there in Lee County.
Yeah, no, we're talking about a trial jury pool being tainted.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Trial. So here's my question.
It's very insulting. I'll tell you this too. I've had members of this grand jury. People just totally don't get that those are 18 of Mr. Hubbard's constituents drawn randomly by the court, who are both Republican judges there, by the way. Both those judges in that county, Republicans, they go to the same meetings and lunches and everything that their local representative does. And guess who that is? That's Mike Hubbard. I mean, what a tough spot for them. I've been admiring them that they hadn't had a cardiac arrest. They got to see their career flash in front of their lives, it's just I don't hear any challenge on the other side. Now and there's a lot of commentary about the law that we're going to outlaw business relationships, and just your average business relationship. That's just the most absurd thing I've ever heard in the world, and there's no evidence for that whatsoever. The statutes are clear on their face. I mean, they're just, and I heard your peer, the other radio guy, what's his name?
Matt Murphy?
Leland Whaley.
Oh, Leland Whaley.
Leland.
Uh-huh.
Is it Leland or Leland?
I don't know.
I don't either. My wife listens to him, but I don't know. I've heard him a couple times. I don't have time during the day. Sorry to say I don't listen to your show that often, but because it runs during the daytime most of the time. But I have listened to it as of late, and I've got guys who work for me who listen to it all the time. Mm-hmm. But Leland said he just made the statement on his Facebook page. I was just surprised, really, because I don't think he's a dumb guy. He's sophisticated. He's been around. And he said, well, these 5 things could possibly have some meat to them, but these others are just fluff. I mean, that's a close paraphrase. I'm just thinking to myself, really? Really, well, I wonder how many cases Leland has worked before on something like this. And I was stunned to hear Mike Ball on your show, who I know. I don't know him well, but I know Mike Ball. I think he retired as a corporal out of the ABI. Are you familiar with his law enforcement background?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was too. And, I expected a little more out of Mike. Mike made statements, and I don't blame anybody for saying, hey, this guy's my friend. He's never done anything in front of me that would make you think he's a crook. I believe him. All those things. But for Mike Ball to say to your show in the greater Birmingham area, to impugn the integrity, he said this. This is a near.
He also said it in Huntsville, and it's broadcast in both areas.
Okay, Huntsville. Well, that's even worse. Yeah. So he says to all those folks, I don't know if the whole thing's political, about knocking him out of office or that. He said, but I'm absolutely certain. That's the phrase he used. I'm absolutely certain that the prosecutors, and he said the prosecutors, timed this thing to affect the election for speaker. He said that on your show, and he based that on. I spoke to Mr. Ball. I don't want to say anything. We had a conversation. I just expressed myself to him. I said, Mike, I'm just surprised you'd say that. You were in law enforcement for 30 years. Don't you think there are other reasons something could come out? If we've been working this case for a year, think about this. When would have been a better time to come out? How about before? If you really wanted to damage him and have some hope of doing it, I think, and I'm not a political consultant, but I think he would have done it before he was running against Mr. Toomer. Doesn't that make better sense?
Maybe.
I mean, I would think it would. I think he can beat this Democrat no matter what. I'd be shocked if he can't. Barry Moore won, and he was running against a Republican. Mm-hmm. And this, if he's still going to get elected. If we wanted to hurt him politically, I would have think the thing to do would have been to do it sooner. Or how about before he announces back in April or March or whenever they have to announce? How about before then? There wasn't. My point is this: there wasn't a good time to do it this year. And we got 160-something witnesses come to that grand jury. I moved them from 2 days to 3 so we could go as fast as we could. We barely made it. I wasn't happy about when we had to do it. I didn't feel completely ready. It just wasn't ideal, but it was what it was. Some of those statutes are running this week. They're going to run between now and December, several of them. And we didn't have any choice on it. So I expect to get hammered on that by people affiliated with the defendant, but I don't expect for guys like, Mike Ball or others just to make flat assertions about our integrity.
So what is the purpose of this?
That's fair.
What's the purpose of this phone call?
I want to point out that there are other explanations, and I'd like you to think about it so you can question people. I hope you will. I hope you'll be, instead of saying on here it's political, which makes it sound like the prosecution is political. And I'm telling you we're not. I want you to hear that out of my mouth. We're not political. It's not true. That's the purpose. So I think you said something on your radio show that is not true, and I don't think you did it intentionally. I'm not calling you a liar, but I think it's unsupported. I think you've drawn the wrong conclusion if that's what you think.
But when are you going to start talking?
Well,
I mean, because here's why I asked it. Here's why I asked it, because you told me at the beginning of this conversation, off the record, unattributable, all that stuff. Yeah. And you tell me all this stuff, and honestly, there's nothing I can do with any of this information.
Right.
Except, I mean, you don't even want me to say I talked to Matt Hart. So
no, I don't. I prefer you don't.
Right. You prefer I don't do it. So it just seems, I'm not saying you're trying to intimidate me, but it kind of seems, and I'm going to be completely honest with you here. Okay, I have been intimidated by the Attorney General's office before.
Let me tell you something now, Mr. Jackson.
Hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I've been intimidated by the Attorney General's office before. Troy King charged me with 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors over a joke on the air, threatened me with 33 years in prison, brought me before a grand jury, and immediately blew the case up because he knew he had nothing. So I'm somewhat reticent about talking about things that are political in nature because Troy King did that, and I know Troy King's actually, I guess, helping Mike Hubbard at this point.
Yeah, have you heard that?
They're hammering me
with having done my job relative to Mr. King. I can't talk about all that, but I'll just tell you right now, and I don't mind saying this to the world, really, although, I'm not ready to yet. Mr. King is a liar, and he was a bad AG. I didn't pick him for AG. He did what he did, and I can tell you with Troy King, like every other person, all I've ever done is my job, and the people working with me, too. And it's stunning to me now that Mike Hubbard has on his Facebook page or election page or whatever he's got, some little audio blurb that somebody forwarded me with Troy King saying, oh, Matt Hart's a rogue, all that. Well, look, I wear his scorn as a badge of honor, believe me, and I'm aware there have been political prosecutions. Of course there have. And that's what I tell grand juries. Really, you're not on my side. You are on the defendant's side because he's not here. There have been political prosecutions. Those things do occur, But we're going to do it right. We're going to do it all on the record. Every word I say to them is recorded. That's unlike other state grand juries. Just a few of the people do that. I can go before the judge at any moment and say, here's why I did what I did in that circumstance. And so can my guys. So...
But I cut you off there. You were trying to tell me something when I said it. I'm not saying you're trying to intimidate me. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, what is the purpose?
You don't sound like a delicate flower on your radio show.
No.
I don't know how you could possibly draw that conclusion out of the way I've been talking to you.
No. The mere conversation itself, off the record, with no attributing, all that stuff.
That's true. I understand, but I told you I don't deny this. I won't deny it. I'm not going to deny. I don't lie. Whatever I do, to the extent I know any journalists, commentators, whatsoever, some of them may not like me. Not a single one of them is going to tell you I ever lied to them. None of them. And I may not talk. They may ask me something. I say I'm not going to talk to you, but I don't lie about things. This conversation is certainly not intended to intimidate. That's not my point. I hope my mere position is, if because of your previous experience, and I really wasn't aware of that until I listened to a blurb, one of your audio blurbs. I can't remember who it was, or maybe it was Senator Orr, where you mentioned that, where you mentioned, hey, he came after me and they offered me a deal, and then they dismissed the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what that sounds like to me?
What?
A bunch of lightweight, unprofessional politicos using the justice system.
Yeah, exactly what it was.
I don't do stuff like that, and my record speaks for.
Well,
itself.
Did you offer Hubbard a deal?
Yes, but there's a totally different circumstance. Now, here's the way you offer a deal if you're legitimate. And the deals are great. I offered Roy Johnson a deal. I don't know if you remember him, the chancellor of the post-secondary school system. You build the case in its entirety, and you're ready to go to prosecute or to present it to the grand jury, and you show the other side, okay, here's what we're getting ready to do. Here's the case we built. Here's we think what we can prove. The grand jury hadn't made the call, but we're going to present this to them, and I think they'll find probable cause. We can do that, or you can do this other option, which is less than that, but it includes accepting responsibility for what you've done, paying the money back, admitting your wrongdoing. There's a lot of value in a plea. Now, a lot of people don't like them, but one of the biggest values.
Back up. What was the plea?
Oh, I'm not going to go into the details of anything.
Did you offer him to resign? Was it part of it resigning his speakership?
Nobody. I can't imagine. I'm not going to go into the details of any specific offer to Mr. Hubbard. But no plea I ever have offered. I mean, that would not be legitimate. You wouldn't be doing your duty if you let somebody you thought had committed. This isn't a jaywalking case. Mm-hmm. That's clear on the face of the indictment. I don't think you could ever cut a deal and do your duty that allowed somebody to stay in office after something like that.
So that was part of it. He would have to have left office. Okay.
I'm really not gonna.
You're not saying it, but you're saying it without saying it. I understand that.
Well, you know what? You're right. That sounds tricky. Let me just not comment anymore. Okay. Whatever deal we did, I'm willing to stand behind it. And I'll say this, just like I offered to Mr. Johnson, it's a good incentive. All those deals are good incentives, or people don't want to do them. They're valuable because right now, for instance, Don Siegelman never took a deal. He got convicted and got sent to the penitentiary. And there are a substantial number of people in the state of Alabama, and they're not all bad people either. They're not all bad. There's some good people in this state who think Don Siegelman got cheated. They think he got cheated and railroaded by the system like the Soviets or something. And, that's not a good thing for this country or for our state. So there's a lot of value, and it ends the argument when somebody like Roy Johnson or, Bryant Melton, Representative Melton, stands up and says, you know what? I did it, and I'm sorry I did it. I was wrong. I did it, and I'm taking it. That ends all it increases the public's confidence. Well, this guy's not being cheated. That's pretty important in these cases. So I guess my point is this, even though I can't speak, you don't have to have the prosecutor's file to exercise your good judgment when you're being a commentator and to challenge things that facially need to be challenged. And I heard a lot of people, honestly, and I don't remember any specific thing you commented on during that period of time, but I remember this. Republican commentators, or people who appear to be Republican, Matt Murphy, Leland, whoever, they were all over Sue Schmitz, Bryant Melton, Larry Langford. My unit did the Larry Langford case. Mr. Langford's a big old crook. He took about $300,000 in bribes. I'm sorry to say, Chris McNair, big crook. I know his little girl got killed in that tragedy, that scarred the state forever. But guess what? He took a bunch of bribes, and his lawyer was saying right up until the time they changed their position, oh, he's innocent. It's political. They can't believe they're going after Chris. He's a great guy. I don't see anything different in those cases except the nature of the commentary and how searching it is, and the fact that these are now friends of some of these commentators and allies and ideological brothers. That's the only difference.
So what's next?
Well, we're just going to do our job now, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned. We've got to. It's hard anyway. I tell you another thing this does. When you get called cheaters, and you know what a prosecutor can do if he wants to have a better life and have more friends and get more invitations to parties? He can prosecute murderers and dope dealers. And all you're going to do is have cop meetings where, the Fraternal Order of Police gives you a plaque, and the victims' outfits tell you how great you are and all that. And they should. I support all of those guys. You don't get that in this line of work. I don't know what the political payoff is for people. I put the corruption unit together in Birmingham in the Northern District that Joyce Vance disbanded when she took office. The most successful unit in the country for 5 years in a row. And you know what? I asked 14 people to join that, and nobody wanted to do it because they knew. I'm getting a bar complaint out of this personally. They're coming after me personally about this. I got news for you, maybe not news for you. You prosecute some redneck for stealing $5,000 from Winn-Dixie, you don't have to worry about your personal life if you're a prosecutor or some kid from the ghetto selling dope down in Woodlawn, that's no big deal because nobody gives a rip. You're just going to get some medals for that. But here, the Republican Party, not that I was ever close to them, but it was known to me. I observed things they said. They thought my work was great back when I was doing people who were in power then. You can look across this country and across the world. When a particular group gets in power and they have access to the money, that's who will be taking the money if anybody takes it. It won't be the people who don't have access to it. So for 50 years, if you were prosecuting corruption in Alabama, you were Democrats because that's who held power. As that shifts, and I'm not saying Republicans are equal or worse or better or anything like that, but I'm just simply saying this. As that changes and Republicans hold power, now they hold all the statewide offices, but then the people who are crooked or who are prosecuted they're going to be some Republicans. That's just all there is to it. Jefferson County is a great example of that. They went Republican 15 years before the rest of the state. And look at Gary White and Mary Buckaloo. I never thought I'd be doing Mary Buckaloo, I have to say. Do you remember her and Gary White?
Not too well, no.
Well, Gary White was a Republican Jefferson County commissioner, took a bunch of bribes, took about, I think it was $100,000 or whatever in cash bribes from a developer in that sewer deal, and he's in a penitentiary right now. But he was a good Republican from Homewood. Mary Buckaloo was a good Republican. And Bill Blunt, you remember him, the bond dealer?
Yeah.
Well, he took her up to New York and bought her thousands of dollars worth of spa treatments and $1,500 purses and whatever else. And you know what she did first? She went in, this is in the public record. She went in the federal grand jury and lied about it. And then she was held to account and she pled guilty and said, yeah, I did do it. And she left and got a felony. And she was a Republican. So, human nature, I've prosecuted prosecutors. I've prosecuted 2 sitting DAs. You may not know that. 2 sitting DAs. Guess how many friends I made with the district attorneys doing that, especially before they were convicted. I got a call from the DA's Association. Hey, is this really something you want to do? Is this guy really guilty? Blah, blah. He went to jail for 44 months. That was John Pilati. Because he was shaking people down using his power as a prosecutor. And because he was also a creep who was grabbing young men and then abusing them sexually. And it was just incredible. I felt great doing John Pilati. That's how I felt about John Pilati. And, a prosecutor my eye. Just another, I've prosecuted some judges. Human nature knows no bounds, and I think most cops are great. I love prosecutors. I am one, and I'm proud of it. But we're either going to do this or we're not. And we're going to find out. Conservatives and Republicans, they either really mean what they say or they only mean it for the other guys.
So when are you going to start talking publicly?
Well, as soon as I can, if I can. I don't know. I wish I could answer your question. I don't know. If I talk, it probably won't be publicly. I'm going to put it in a filing and ask the court to unseal everything in the world. It's also so special when somebody tries to get their grand jury eliminated. I don't know many actual normal citizens who can do that, too. And those 18 people on that grand jury, they're insulted, and they talk to me and say, we may want to go public. We're not stupid. We sat here and listened to this for a year. And people are saying we're just like some pawn in some prosecutor's hands. That really does diminish them and demean them. 18 people drawn randomly in Lee County. And all this ham sandwich stuff, that's true when you do typical prosecutions, probably 300 a week, and you just only have your agent. These were 160 witnesses. Now, the other thing they said is grand juries don't do this. Can you imagine how much water would be roiled if we did 160 interviews out in the community without using the grand jury? This is a course of conduct that is not one event. It is a broad, deep, and consistent course of conduct that is alleged on the part of Mr. Hubbard. And those investigations are not done. They're different. I've been to the schools in this country. It's a conventional method that we use. It's reliable, and it's checkable. But what I'm hearing now is just nothing but talking points coming from the defense, unchallenged. And I would think that certainly journalists and even commentators, they don't have to have the prosecution's file to use their own wits and say, well, hey, what about this? So, I guess that's part of my call.
Well, you also got to remember this. There's a vacuum on your end.
I understand.
I mean, and if you're able to talk, and you're not, that vacuum is going to get filled.
Yeah, I understand. Believe me, I do, and I want to fill it. My desire is to have the world know everything. Like I said, I'm on record forever. I don't like sealing anything. What I don't like is unsealing parts of things. I want it all out there. If we're going to do it, let's let it all.
So when's that going to happen?
I'm not sure. I don't know yet. But, I still, nevertheless, and I know it's unsatisfying, and it may not be, it may not be completely actionable. I'm not sure there's anything to be done. But if nothing else, then to let you hear the words out of my mouth for whatever they're worth. We're not cheaters. Not a damn one of us, excuse me.
So what's up with all the stuff in the AG's office? Is that just all BS?
Well, I think we'll see. It's in the record that Mr. Reagan has violated some rules. I think he's going to be fired. He's working for the AG, but talking to the defendant's attorneys during the course of this thing. And to the extent his letters are public, that I threatened him with a grand jury over some office space. That's the biggest bunch of malarkey I've ever heard.
Just completely made up?
Well, now what he did, the statements, I'll say this. He knows how I talk. Sonny knows how I talk. I was so disappointed. But anyway, and I use military colloquialisms and things like that because that's some of my background. But and he wove in his various in his complaint and his various letters that he wrote, he wove, like most good liars do, or even decent liars, he wove some elements of truth into his lying statement. His statements of substance are lies. I never said I was, for instance, the biggest thing he said that I cared about, if anybody believed it, was that even if we couldn't make a criminal case on Mike Hubbard, we'd ruin him politically with an investigation, which just goes against everything I've ever done in my life. And if my guys even joke like that, I'd tighten them up for it. And it's not true. That's just false. And I think when he's sitting there writing that complaint, he's talking to Mr. Hubbard's lawyers while he's doing it. And then he turns it in the next morning. And we got onto this in a way that I hope is public. I am going to try to open up every bit of that. I think Sonny's a cheater. He was corrupted. I'm sorry to say he was corrupted. I believe they may have been offering him jobs. I know they've done that with other folks. I believe that to be the case. And when you're talking about doing cases where the people with the most power in the state, a governor, I worked on Don Siegelman's case years ago, unsuccessfully ultimately unsuccessfully on the Medicaid bid rigging case, the Bobo case. When you're working on a governor or the Speaker of the House, who people say is as powerful as the governor right now, that kind of thing, things are different. And that's when they GPS your automobile and follow you to your girlfriend's house, when you're married, if you're an agent. Or, they put a GPS on Mr. Barber's car and they follow him over to the casino. Because at that time, of course, the gambling folks are on the other side. It's all the same to me. It's just all the same to me. And yes, the stuff in our office, we had problems in our office. And it's because power affected people who were there. Power affiliated with these defendants affected them. I'm ready to defend every single bit of that. And anything in there that impugns us, our integrity or the investigation, is a lie. Yes, it's a lie. And I look forward to getting it all out there. And I'm glad we detected it ahead of time.
How did you detect it?
I can't go into it, not right now. But I think it'll speak for itself when we show it. And it just is what it is. Those things occur. I was really bummed by that. I got to tell you. And Sonny I've known Sonny for years. He's not a friend of mine. I would call him a friendly associate. I've known some other people who are closer to him. Sonny's just one of these Politico guys. He did some prosecuting, but he's a governor's legal advisor, and that's not how you build a repertoire of prosecutor skills. Bouncing around, going to lunch with people. Sonny's He cares about who's powerful, and rubbing elbows with people who impress him. And Sonny was weak. That's what he was at best. And then in my view, he made some bad decisions, wrong decisions. He did some wrong things. And I also think the people who he's affiliated with, I think they're just as sorry as they can be for using him. Because I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to throw Sonny out the window about a year from now, and that'll be it for him. He demeaned himself and did some wrong things here.
What are the chances you get all 23 counts? I mean, what are you looking at? You said Leland was completely wrong for the 5-count comment. I mean, I understand you.
I don't think he was. I didn't say he was completely wrong. I didn't say that. I said he asserted something just outright. There's no chance these others go. I mean, that's what he said. And I don't think that's true.
Well, I mean, obviously, you don't indict unless you think there's a chance. But, I mean, let's be realistic here for a second.
Oh, that's right. No, I think you have a responsibility not to bring a case you don't think you can at least have a good chance at winning and be wasteful, if nothing else. No, we were very cautious. I feel like this is a conservative document. I really do. And a lot of it, now Alabama has pleading rules. They don't, the federal system, we could write a speaking indictment like we did in the post-secondary case or Larry Langford's case or whoever. And the public understands a lot more of it right up front because the government puts the story in there so people can understand it. But that's not the state has, in what I consider somewhat antiquated pleading rules, but they are what they are, and we have to follow them. So we put in that indictment what we could. Now, I'll tell you what the defense can do. If it's not clear enough to them, guess what they can do? They can make a motion for a more definite statement. Like tell us more definitely what we're charged with so we can understand. If they do that, we'll answer it. But to answer your question, I feel good about all of those charges in there. I mean, I think we have the evidence that if we get it in front of a jury, you never know how these are going to come out. They're going to have a bunch of good lawyers on the other side. That's the other thing. When I hear a DA say, I've got 30, I've done 30 murder cases and I hadn't lost one. I'm not so impressed by that. That's shooting fish in a darn barrel. I've told Luther Strange when he started this, I didn't know Luther Strange before he hired me. He called me up. I turned him down at first. He came back some months later, and he said, I want to do this. I think we need to prosecute corruption in this state because we've had a problem for years. And I said, well, look, don't do it if you don't want to do it. Don't start because it will not help you. Now, he may have wished he'd listened to me a little more closely then. Now, I don't know. I don't think he does. I actually think he feels okay about it. I haven't been talking to him about it, but in my view, Luther's done nothing but the right thing. And he put together some capability there to do it. DAs can't do it. They don't have enough time. They're run over by rapes and murders. But I think we've put together a case with strong evidence.
Why did he recuse himself?
Why didn't who what now?
Why did Luther recuse himself?
Because everybody on his staff, there's an issue. I don't know why it can't be public at this point. Maybe it will be before too long. There were various issues that Luther, had previous relationships with some people, including Mike Hubbard, for instance. And you can't really go interview yourself about something. It doesn't have much credibility. If Luther had started this case and stayed on it and it had not been pursued, you talk about being criticized. I think he really could have been. And there were various things that created potential problems. He submitted it all to his staff and people like me and John Gibbs and Dave Buerberg, who's the head of the appellate unit, and other lawyers of all stripes, 5 or 6 different senior people all came to the conclusion you should pop out of this and find somebody to do it and give it to them completely and isolate yourself from the case. And that's what he was advised to. I don't think he really wanted to do it. I don't think he really wanted to get out of it. I think he thought he'd rather stay in it and do whatever needed to be done. But that's why he got out of it. And he did the right thing, and that analysis was right, and it'll stand up too. But, there is a vacuum on that. I understand that.
And vacuums get filled. I mean, that's basically what's happening here. I mean, if what you're saying is what you believe, the vacuum's getting filled because nobody's talking.
I know. Well, that's what you guys always say to make people talk. and it's pretty effective most of the time. But
that's exactly what's happening.
I know. I'd love to talk. We ultimately will be able to talk. I hope that the jury pool hadn't been, irreparably damaged by that point.
And what do you mean by that? So the jury pool in Lee County, you think that you can't possibly get 12 that would possibly convict?
No, I'm not saying we can't possibly do it. I'm saying it makes it harder. That's why. I mean, there's a purpose. I'm sure you agree. There's a purpose to them having a big press conference and putting a full-page ad in Opelika newspaper and running ads and everything else. They're not stupid. They know that, it's all a matter of odds. I'm not saying we can't get a good jury, and hopefully we will. We're certainly going to try to, no matter what. But I want to give us the best opportunity to get the evidence in front of people who are not biased by that point. And it's true. You don't have to be a propagandist from the 50s in the CIA to realize if people say something enough unchallenged, they can sway the masses to some degree. And it's unswaying them takes a little time, and it may be difficult in the context of a trial. So I'm concerned about it. And I don't think that's unusual. So what I would do, and what we may do, is come out and say to the court, look, we're going to respond in kind. If he gets to have these press conferences and say these things, and maybe we'll put some facts in that motion, and that type of thing. I want to, and I wish I could. I wish I could do more right now, and maybe we will. But one thing we're going to do, we're going to follow the rules, every single one of them, no matter what. If following the rules causes us to lose, then we will lose. So whatever's done, we're going to do it the right way, no matter what happens. And I just hope this. I hope you'll think about that. I hope you'll just think about it when you're listening to Mike Ball or, Mr. Hubbard or any of his affiliates. I hope you'll think about it, just like you'd think about it when you were looking at E.B. McClain.
Okay. Well, I mean, I look forward to the time when you're ready to talk.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you giving me your time today.
No problem.
All right. Take care.